Everybody say, here he comes. He's on his way. He's almost here. It's going to happen.
This is overwhelming. Initially it was supposed to be a secret, and then people were congratulating me. And initially I thought they were mistaking me for someone else. But then after a while I had to realize that something is up. And of course, eventually I was told that this was going to happen. And my first thought was, oh my goodness, I don't want this. But then I realized there are so many people in my life that I don't keep in touch with very well. And the thought of reconnecting with people, many of them are around me and I see them all the time. But then there are others that I don't see very often. And then there are some I haven't seen for a long time. And so that kind of made me realize that it's a good thing. Thank you so much. There is someone that I was alerted was going to be here. I wasn't alerted that Bloom was going to be here, so that's a surprise.
32 hours later after my Greyhound trip. Your people have kept me as a secret surprise in their house.
Wonderful. So glad to meet you. And then another young person in my life. Another young person in my life, yes, Leah. Leah is from my college days. I was really close with her mother, Lila, and Leela was a toddler. And so when I got the email that she was coming, it really made me realize that this is going to be a worthwhile event.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Charles, have a seat at the head table. Table of honor. The food buffet is now open. There's plenty of food. You don't have to be in a rush.
So we have regular food and vegan food. If you're not inclined toward vegan food, please take the regular food so that those that are inclined toward vegan will have plenty of vegan food. I wish I'd gotten a picture of Charles when he first saw this group.
How come he didn't come through that door?
Because it was closed. Are your doors closed?
Yeah, but there was a woman who was going in and out. Okay, it happened.
it's happening. 3 months of planning and it's happening.
It's freaking priceless, I'm excited. I wrote my speech and printed it up. And I'm not playing. I'm a teacher. And, so I'm excited. I'm going to have to use the microphone properly tonight.
I got you down toward the end.
Which is good, because I told Bill it's going to be at least 3 to 4 minutes, and it's from the heart, but I'm staying on script. I'm staying on script. I've learned public speaking, you got to focus in. I've done Toastmasters, and a little bit of public speaking in the military, plus I work with children who have to speak. Yeah. That's Toastmasters, though. Have you ever done Toastmasters? It makes you feel more confident in speaking. Oh, they time you in Toastmasters.
That's good.
Yeah. So we're allowed to eat, and then you'll let us know when we need to start coming up and doing it. Okay, awesome. Cool. I'm just so happy. I can't believe I'm here. It's awesome.
It's been a while.
I know, Robbie. When?
Yeah, I remember. You were at a restaurant? It's been a while. How have you been? Good.
It's like you're getting ready to specify over here.
Sorry to herd the cats.
Yeah.
Good. Really?
Oh, it's really so sad. A lot of people are finishing the food. She doesn't want to sleep.
Okay. So I'm gonna go get into you.
Good.
This is like like if you met the airless. Yeah, I did meet you. One time at getting a burrito.
Really? It doesn't seem to. Oh, really? So, he's going to speak, and I'm going to get a timekeeper. I've never been a public speaking, so I'm not going to make it live. I'm going to keep saying.
That's good. That's gonna be a real good.
He's going to laugh, he's going to be like, okay, forget this. I'll let him know.
Congratulations. Getting him. That's very nice. How much work is it? Putting in the first bed? We did do everything. It lasted actually 3.5 days. Oh wow. Yeah, it was like a thing. We got a people. We come on Thursday. Come on the wedding on Saturday, so come whenever they wanted and just pick everybody up by Sunday.
I'm going to be very surprised by this.
Yeah.
So it's Beberanzu Isu. You know what that means? Beberanzu Isu. Beberanzu Isu.
Oh my God.
Since it's got the logo.
You would never get McDonald's if I said McDonald's in Japanese. You would never get it.
Okay. Yeah, me too. Not yet. Go ahead.
Gracious.
We're good.
Anywhere. Anywhere. Did you go? You didn't go yet, did you? I did. Oh, you did? Okay. Good.
I guess I should sit over there to do timekeeping,
Yeah, okay.
or I can sit over there.
That's it.
Kind of hard to do from over there.
We have room here.
Who is?
Why don't you sit over there?
Okay.
Good man. Just passing through again.
Okay. Eventually. Kaya, the gardenias are sitting there. Sure. Once again, good afternoon. I'm Herb Hoffman. I'll be your
master of ceremonies for the rest of the event, although I feel I've already lost the battle. The herd of cats has taken over. I'm going, this is going to be, I hope, an interesting and engaging afternoon. We have a number of speakers who will provide and fill out the background of Charles Powell. And I think there are some interesting stories that most of us do not know, and there are some that we're perhaps familiar with. In any event, that is it. I will try not to interrupt very much during this day. However, I feel I have to provide an obligatory story like any master of ceremonies does. So I will. There were three elderly gentlemen who were talking about their grandchildren, and they were speculating on what would their grandchildren say about them in 50 years. First man said, "I would like my grandchildren to say he was successful in business." That's what the first man said. Then, turning to the second man, he said, 50 years from now, I want them to say he was a loyal family man. Turning to the third gentleman in the group, the first guy asked, "So what do you want them to say about you in 50 years from now?" The third man replied, "I want them all to say, he certainly looks good for his age." Bernard Baruch said, "Age is only a number, a cipher for the records. A man can't retire his experience. He must use it." And so, good-looking Charles, whom we honor today, is certainly a man who cannot retire from his experiences. We all know Charles is going to keep on contributing and volunteering and helping as many people as he possibly can. Charles, before you get too settled, you have responsibilities like any guest of honor. And what we would like you to do now is to go over and cut the cake so that people will be served cake for their dessert. Now, for those of you who walked by the line, you may not have noticed that the cake on the right has an interesting anagram. It says, courage, respect, peace. CRP, familiar initials. So Charles, if you go do the honors of cutting the first cut, and then you can eat. And maybe I can eat too. notes. And this is a fund which will provide awards to high school students in Albuquerque. And the theme of the award, or the theme of the task for the essayist, will be to increase public awareness of the causes and costs of war and the promotion of peace. I don't have a final figure on what we have raised to date. Haya, do you have an approximation?
It changes every minute.
Okay. I'm quite certain that we have raised over $1,000.
Ah, okay.
Okay. So if any of you would like to make an additional contribution to the fund, you can leave a check with Haya. Why don't you stand up, Haya, so everybody sees you? You're the target. The first speaker will be the president of our VFP chapter here in Albuquerque, Chris Hardy.
Hi, my name's Chris Hardy. I have some huge shoes to fill. I'm not going to take much longer because there are people in this room that know Charles way better and way longer than I have. I've only known him for probably about 1.5 to 2 years. But in that time, I've seen him at protests and events, like every single one it seems like, always telling people about Veterans for Peace, telling people about militarization, telling people about peace. And then most recently, Charles mainly has been working on the case of Cesar Lopez. He's a U.S. Marine veteran who was deported back in 2013. And he had his green card removed from him because of a drug conviction from 2000. So 13 years later, when he was coming back into the country, he was detained by the Homeland Security and deported. And so Charles has been a tireless advocate for him. And just the other day, he was able to present a whole, I think something like 70 some odd signatures on the petitions. I'm sorry. 786, not 76, 786 signatures that were presented. That were presented to Governor Lujan Grisham to ask for her to pardon Cesar. Because if she pardons Cesar, then he can get his green card back and live here with his family and his wife and his daughters. And right now he's living in the country illegally and is on the run from the authorities. So seeing all the work that Charles put into that, and with that being such an important thing, I have a personal tie to this case as well that I want to tell you a little bit about. And what Charles had done, or his effort and his energy, still amazes me. And he's done this, whether or not anybody was following him, just because it looked to me as, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the right thing to do. And Charles, I thank you for that, and I thank you for being that guiding light and that energy source. Regarding Cesar, and take one quick second. So my background, I'm an Air Force Academy graduate. I left the Air Force when I was a captain back in 2007. In 2010, I worked for a software company in Ohio that was working with the police departments and courts and the FBI to share data with one another. So writing the software that would allow all that data sharing to happen. I left that company in 2011, but then just, about, a year, 2 years ago, when we saw all these deportations happening, I realized that it's very likely that the software that I wrote was responsible for DHS finding those people that they were deporting. So Cesar's case feels very personal to me. I don't know whether I was involved, but the fact that I might have been involved has made me want to make sure that he gets his pardon. And that's also made me a really strong advocate for the work that Veterans for Peace is doing, because we are calling for both his pardon, the pardon of other veterans, the pardons of other people who have been deported that are in that same case. So if you are fighting for peace, if you're fighting for justice, if you want to try to change this world, change this community to be more sane, but more safe and more inclusive of other people, please consider joining Veterans for Peace. Even if you're not a veteran, you can be an associate member, and you could even have a board position as an associate member. So I'll pass the mic on to the next speakers, but I thank you all for coming, and thank you, Charles, for doing that, and I'm going to do my best to follow your path.
Thank you, Chris. I think the leadership of the VFP chapter here in Albuquerque is in good hands. Now, I understand Daniel Craig is here someplace. Daniel, come on up. While Daniel is making his way up here, I'll mention that I carried greetings from Senator Thomas Udall. He's unable to be here today. He's been traveling, but he does want to congratulate Charles on having achieved quite a bit of an honor. And so our next speaker will be, and this is our keynote speaker. When I referred to how I had lost control a while back, well, I thought I had, and that is because our keynote speaker was not going to be here for quite some time, if ever. However, Daniel Craig is here. He is the president of the VFP chapter in Santa Fe, our sister chapter, or brother chapter to be gender neutral. And he is also a board member of the National VFP. And in addition to that, he is carrying greetings from the national president. Daniel?
Maybe we should do the mayor's thing before we get into
All right. Thank you, and it's really wonderful to be here in celebration of not just what you do, Charles, but who you are. So I'm going to make a few remarks that aren't from the national board. I'm the chapter president up in Santa Fe, like you said. I'm a Gulf War veteran, 1991 Army. I've been involved in I've been in Veterans for Peace doing things since approximately 2002. And in the time I've been able to meet people, and really honored to meet people like Charles and a couple other people I know from here in Albuquerque who probably do one hell of a lot more work than I do. I'm just happy that I am able to do what I do. So as a chapter president up north, one of the things I wanted to put out to everyone here who doesn't know is one of our chapter members, Ken Mayers, and for those of you who know Tarak Kauf, they're currently doing time in an Irish prison in Limerick for breaching the security perimeter of the Shannon Airport. They have a hearing this coming Thursday for bail. They were denied bail already. There's a strong possibility they could be in Ireland for the next couple of years. They took their passports, and it doesn't sound like they have any indication that they're giving their passports up. Even if they're out of prison, they may be residing in Ireland for the next couple of years, depending on the court dates and so on and so forth. So if you would keep them in mind, this is a church, I'm not a Christian, but if you would keep them in mind and in prayer, that would be a wonderful thing if that's what you do for people. Yeah, that's one of our biggest things going on with us, and it's not us, it's Ken. Sir?
And why was Ken and the other why would he choose security and planning?
That part I'm not sure, because Ken is Ken, one. And if you know Tarek, Tarek is Tarek. They were in... Well, just real quick, they were in Ireland protesting the United States government using Shannon Airport for transporting personnel, material, and rendered personnel to black sites to different parts of the world. So I know that. Now, why they went through the fence is because, like I said, Ken is Ken and Tarek is Tarek. So they were arrested for that, not for the protesting aspect, but for breaching the security perimeter of the airport. There's a, if you have it in your heart and in your wallet, there is the Veterans for Peace National Office set up page where you can make donations towards their defense fund. So if you can, great. If you can't, prayer and energy their way is wonderful. Thank you. I'm not going to say a lot about Charles because I know you mostly our interaction at conventions, even though we're like 55 3/4 of a mile apart. I barely leave Santa Fe city limits ever. But in the time I've gotten to know Charles, is like I used to have weird heroes, like all those jackasses in the movies who like personified the macho, you know, that machismo stuff, like the racist John Wayne, who when I found out he was, it's like, it was not that hard to say, I really don't care for you anymore. So my heroes have really shifted since I got into activism, so I joined Veterans for Peace. Ken, Tarek, a number of members of Veterans for Peace, other organizations that have members with whom we are aligned are my heroes. I got to meet a number of prominent names in the world, and those have become my heroes. And then locally, you know, like Ken I've known for years. I think I've known you probably 6, 7 years now. And one of the things I love is your poetry. So I get to hear you every year at the convention. And that's what's important to me today, not being of a mind and physically fit to be in the military and carry out a mission the way we were trained, but to see, especially men, do something different, you know, because that's not the way the society is geared. So I really appreciate that aspect of who you are. So it's, again, not just what you do, but who you are that I really appreciate. I don't want to carry on because there's lots of people who know you better, and hopefully we'll hear some funny stories in addition to all the solemn stuff. But I do have some words from our national, well, let me say, it's not nationally, but we're international. We have chapters all over the world now. I think we're on the verge of having a chapter down either in Venezuela or actually in Nicaragua. So Jerry Condon is our international president, even though we don't use the word international yet. And he was going to be here to say these words, except after his trip to Venezuela, where he met the president, and then he went to Nicaragua, met another, Brian Wilson, if any of you know him, he's a veteran for peace. He caught the flu as soon as he got back into the continental United States, so he's not able to be here today. So this is weird doing it on a cell phone rather than, like, you know, larger words. So if I don't look up at you, I'm not the greatest speaker that I can, you know, like memorize a paragraph and then look at you and read it. I'll look more at my phone than I will anything else, so you just have to bear with me. So this is from Jerry. Dear friends in Albuquerque and Veterans for Peace, it's wonderful and very appropriate that you're honoring Charles Powell for his many years of faithful leadership of your chapter and for his excellent representation of Veterans for Peace to the wider community, including National Veterans for Peace. This is certainly a much deserved honor and a very special occasion. I, Jerry, was so inspired when I heard about this celebration that I purchased airline tickets to Albuquerque so I could join you all today. Regrettably, however, I have been laid low by a nasty flu. I was probably exposed to it on one of the 7 flights I recently took on my way to and from Venezuela, representing VFP on a delegation of US and Canadian peace activists. About Venezuela, I will tell you this for now. The divisions in that country are along clear class and race lines. The opposition rallies are white and middle class and led by right-wing oligarchs backed by the US. 19 people with darker skin have actually been attacked at these rallies. Sounds like here. On the assumption that they were government supporters, 9 of them have died. Some were burned alive. So much for the nonviolent protest movement portrayed in the mainstream media. The poor working class barrios of the capital Caracas, with millions of black and brown people, are well organized and prepared to defend Venezuela for all forms of foreign intervention. The peace movement, thank you. The peace movement in the United States is getting better organized so that we can do the same here for them. Veterans for Peace will have an important role to play in that. Charles, I join the many others who have been touched by your sincere and peaceful manner, including Brian Wilson, who ran into you on the train on the way to which BF convention was that? He left it for you to think.
It was Dallas, and what was that?
I was so new then. I didn't go. But yeah, so you were able to meet Brian, and he says hello. Where did I go? So I was saying, it's easier when the words are a lot larger than this. Okay. Maybe we will see you again this year at our convention in Spokane, Washington, 15 through 18 August. The theme will be Sacred Lives, Sacred Lands, Sacred Lives, Peace Knows No Borders. And next year, the VFP National Convention will be hosted right here in Albuquerque between the Albuquerque and Santa Fe chapters. We're doing it on and there's no commemoration about this. We are marking the 75th anniversary of the use of the first atomic weapons, first here in New Mexico down south, and then Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That convention will be happening on the dates, Thursday, I think it's 5 August or 6 August, when the when the United States government and the corporations that back it dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, and then subsequently that Sunday of the convention we'll be marking Nagasaki Day. So we're going to have events here in Albuquerque as well as up on the hill in Los Alamos to not commemorate, but to mark this. So you are welcome to join us in any way, shape, or form. I will not wait until then to pay you a visit, however. I hope to be able to visit you all in Albuquerque in the near future, perhaps here in late April, when we can all talk together about how to more effectively restrain our government from intervening overtly and covertly into the international affairs of other nations. We can also talk about how to better defend people of color, indigenous people, and Muslim people who are under constant attack in our own communities. Thank you again, Charles, for all your dedication and hard work. I am truly inspired by your example. On behalf of the Veterans for Peace Board of Directors, I salute you and I wish you a wonderful celebration. Jerry Condon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Jerry. Before we go, Mr. Nieto, where are you? There he is. Mr. Nieto is going to bring greetings from our mayor, Tim Keller.
Thank you all very much. Unfortunately, the mayor is bogged down in budget season right now, so he sent his regards, and when they asked who would be willing to come and speak today, I jumped at it because Charles has done so much on many of the campaigns that I've worked on that I just could not be here. So please allow me to read this really quickly. Executive order from the Office of the Mayor. Whereas Charles Powell has dedicated his life to advancing the common interests of the people of Albuquerque, and whereas he is a champion of progressive causes, big and small, that help those most in need, and whereas he is a committed community organizer, having participated in countless progressive campaigns to propel forward candidates and policies of change, and whereas he is integral to numerous community organizations, including the New Mexico Democratic Party, Democratic Black Caucus, the Albuquerque NAACP, Southwest Riders, Gray Panthers, SWAP, Progressive Democrats of Central New Mexico, the League of Women Voters, and Veterans for Peace, among many others. And whereas he is a selfless advocate for the city of Albuquerque, the state of New Mexico, and all of its residents. Now, therefore, Aaron Nieto, on behalf of Timothy M. Keller, Mayor of the City of Albuquerque, do hereby proclaim March 24th, 2019 as Charles Powell Day.
Charles, you just never know. Our next speaker, we're very honored this evening to have our newly elected congressional representative from this area, Representative Deb Holland.
Thank you, Hank. Well, gosh, I wish I could have gone before Aaron. I can't top the Charles Powell Day, unfortunately. But I am honored to be here, of course, honoring Charles Powell, who, yes, he's everywhere, right? Anywhere you go, there's Charles. At the State Fair, at Veterans Day, at the Martin Luther King Jr. March, at the Women's March, at the, wherever you go, you can rest assured that Charles will be there advocating for the things that he truly believes in. And I know that's what all of us love him for, because we can rely on him. He's trustworthy. He stands by his word. He shows up when he says he's going to show up. Those are all qualities that I know we deeply appreciate in this crazy era of politics. I'm honored to be here with so many of you, so many of my dear friends. Wanted to acknowledge our new Senator, Cedillo Lopez. Yes. And talk about, entering the state legislature with a bang. She really did do a fabulous job, and we're so proud of all the folks that we all elected together. And I know Charles is happy too. It seemingly got a tremendous amount done. So I'm just here to say that from the congressional side, yes, it's like drinking through a fire hose. And so if there's a bill you want me to co-sponsor, call my office and let us know, because honestly, with the Democrats taking over the House right now, there's a million bills, right? Like, we've all been hungry to get our bills on the floor and talk about the issues that we care about. And so there's just a lot going on, and we know that we can still move our agenda forward. At the same time, we are holding this administration accountable. So, yes. So don't hesitate to call my office. I just heard of one bill that I can co-sponsor, and I will do that as soon as I get back to Washington, D.C. So just don't hesitate to call me. If there's something you need, let me know. If you don't hear from our office in a couple days, call us back. I hate to say that. It seems like every single week there's a big convention in town, and so our office is always jam-packed with visitors, which I love. Always happy to see. Pamela was in my office not too long ago. I was really happy always happy to have New Mexicans there. So just know that I am here. I am going to look up to Charles as one of my mentors, He stands by his word, and I will always strive to do that as well. So anything that I tell you I will do, I will do, unless I forget, at which time you'll need to remind me. So, so thank you all so much for giving me an opportunity. Amidst all of the crazy politics, I am proud that we got the public lands bill through, and the president signed it. And since I might as well just give a little bit of information, we're having some field hearings here in New Mexico. I'm bringing the chairman of the House Resources Committee, as well as some other members of Congress, to have field hearings on Chaco Canyon, because we don't want fracking there. So you'll know when those things happen. You know, we'll do some social media on all of that, but just know that everything that I said I would stand up for as far as the environment is concerned, we're doing it right now, but we always need your help. We always need that backup, you know, the Army to retweet and post and you know, just be there when it's time to take a stand. So thank you all so much. Charles, I couldn't be prouder to be your friend. So thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Our next speaker, many of you know, you certainly will recognize, and that is a name which you should be very familiar with, since it's part of our chapter identification. Sally Alice Thompson.
I'm very fortunate to have Charles for a friend. I met him about 18 years ago when we were having the Veterans for Peace Convention here in Albuquerque, and my husband and I were doing all the arrangements, and suddenly Charles Powell appeared, and he filled in all the details and helped make the convention one that people still remember, even to this day. And so that was Charles's first time to attend a Veteran for Peace convention, and so he has attended almost all of them ever since, and I have been so very, very happy to share the Veterans for Peace Convention experience with him. We've sat for many hours through contentious business meetings, voting on amendments and resolutions, and ordinarily he voted right. He voted with me. Yeah. Once in a while he'd cancel out my vote. I remember a lot of things that happened at the conventions. For example, we had dinner on a riverboat when the convention was in St. Louis, Missouri, and the night I spent the night with him. It was at the convention in Boston, and we both were staying an extra night because the Democratic convention was also there at the same time, and so I had a room at the Dennis Kucinich campaign, and he didn't have a hotel room, and the hotels were pretty much booked up. So there were 2 beds in my in my room, so I didn't see any reason why why there should be an empty bed when there was a man who needed a place to sleep. So we shared a room that night. So I've had a lot of experiences with him. I don't even remember all of them. But anyway, he's been a wonderful friend and a wonderful, wonderful president ever since my husband retired as president many years ago. And he's done a very good job. Thank you, Charles.
That was probably the last thing you expected, a racy story. Our next speaker, former city councilor here in Albuquerque, Ray Garduno.
Thank you, Charles. You know, when I decided to run, I asked Charles if he'd help collect $5 because I ran under public financing. And he said, "Now you're not going to pocket this money, are you?" And I said, "Well, if I do, I'm going to be one of your cheapest politicians that ever existed." But I do want to tell you something. And no, we didn't spend the night together. We might have wanted to, but we didn't. But you know, at one point, I decided if I'd go to different occasions and events and all kinds of things, and I'd look around, and sure enough, Charles was there. And so I'd say to myself, I'm at the right place. Even the city council meetings. You know. And I sort of told myself, do that, because if he's not there, quickly turn around and leave. Because it's probably the wrong place. Charles, it's just amazing to see you do the work you do, but to do it with such dignity, such ease. You know, a lot of us sweat and bother and worry and all that sort of thing. And it seems like you just have a knack for doing the right thing, but doing it just with aplomb. My wife, Ilsa, and I have always looked at you and thought, now there's a person that we'd like to, you know, be like. And I tried, I really did. Thank you, Charles. All of us, I'm sure, are thinking, you know, is he going to stop, or is he running for office again? So I'm not running for office, and I just want to thank you, and Godspeed.
And now we're moving right along. Barbara Peterson, where are you? Come on down. Barbara Peterson is on the Albuquerque School Committee. She represents District 4. That's my district.
I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you, Herb.
You're welcome.
Well, this is going to be short and sweet. I don't think I've ever met any human being that sticks to his principles as much as Charles does, and then works his tail off to make it a reality. And that deserves more respect than we can possibly show him. So we know that he may be stepping out of one role, but I suspect this is not the last we have seen of Charles. I think we would have I suspect we would have to hog tie him and put him in the trunk of a car to actually keep him from being out there and working to make the change that he knows our community needs. So from the bottom of my heart, and I know the heart of every human being in here, thank you, Charles. Thank you.
And thank you, Barbara. Next speaker, Maggie Hart Stebbins. Where are you? Is she here? She didn't get here. Well, she may be coming in later. Bill, I saw you come in. Bill Pratt. Representative Bill Pratt, where are you, Bill? There, he's coming.
I may be slow, but I'm steady.
Bill, many of you may not know, has seniority in the first class elected this past year because he was appointed representative by the Bernalillo County Commission prior to the elections. So he entered the election as an incumbent. Can you believe that?
Thank you so much, Herb, and thank you, Charles. My wife Sally and I were very disturbed in December 2000 at the Bush v. Gore decision, and we became politically active with that impetus. Later we became active with the United Nations Association and began meetings at the Peace and Justice Center where we met Charles. Later, this activism is personified in Charles Powell. Later, we moved into a red district in northeast Albuquerque. It's no longer red, by the way. Charles was an inspiration for activism, and I happened to, through a series of circumstances, peculiar circumstances, I wound up replacing a Republican with a Democrat. We're not partisan, of course. So at any rate, Charles was an inspiration to both of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill. Our next speaker is Lovey McGee. Lovey, where are you? Are you here? Here she is, a little bit shy, a little bit, come on, you're a public figure. By the way, Lovey, I'm not quite sure your title, but you are with the African American Cultural Center.
President.
You're president.
Yeah.
You know, I looked on the internet for your title. Nowhere does it say who you are in the organization.
I will just tell them right now.
I think that's about time.
Words cannot express what Charles has done and been to this community. And if we had more people like Charles, we would gain a whole bunch of bills and all kinds of change laws and rules and everything like that. Charles, one of the things that I want to say thank you for is being a man of your word. Your word is your bond. And we are very, very grateful to you, what you've done in this community. And I don't think anybody can fill your shoes. I know I can't. I wouldn't even try. But again, words cannot express what we feel. We love you, Charles. And I know you're going to keep on doing what you're doing. I appreciate Charles a lot for what he has done for the homeless. I work with the homeless, and he has been very faithful in helping with the children who have no food and no clothes. And all I can say, Charles, is I thank you.
Thank you, President Lovey. Our next speaker is Dr. Harold Bailey. Harold, are you here? Oh, you're a woman. You know, I didn't know that. And Harold, Dr. Bailey is a president of the Albuquerque chapter of NAACP.
That's it.
Okay.
So every once in a while, I get to sit in or step in for Dr. Bailey. My name is Pamela Herndon, and I'm the first vice chair of the NAACP. And there's a story behind its NAACP as opposed to NAACP. We won't go into that today, but I just wanted you to know that. So Charles Powell has been a member of the NAACP for far more than 10 years. And our mission is to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights of all persons and to eliminate race-based discrimination. And that definitely is Charles Powell. So you've heard today that he is also a poet. So we made an attempt. Charles, don't forgive us, all right? It may albeit a feeble attempt to write a poem dedicated to you. So here it is, Charles Powell. Let me tell you about a man who is always there. He wipes away tears and shows many, many people that he cares. He is a man who has about the biggest heart and an undying love for causes, for veterans, and others from the start. He is always on time without a wink. He never says unkind words, never in a blink. The efforts that he puts into his work goes much further than a distant mile. And if you notice, he is always dressed in the peak of style. He has a special place in all of our hearts, a place that no storm or unforgiving person could ever tear apart. His name or photo in any magazine or newspaper may never appear, and he may never be voted the state's Man of the Year. But his name is Charles Powell. Sometimes he can raise hell, but he makes friends easily, and he loves his community despite all the strife. He is an honorable man who lives an honorable life. Thank you, Charles Powell.
Thank you, Pamela. I wasn't aware of your identity until just now. I have you on the speakers program. Well, I have you on the speakers program speaking for the Democratic State Black Caucus. Do you want to do that too? Hey! Get a double header.
We didn't write a special poem for you, Charles, but I can tell you that one of the greatest assets of the Democratic Black Caucus, and we just celebrated our 5th anniversary this year, was having Charles Powell as being one of our original members. And I can tell you that he's helped guide our strategy, our goals, our mission, and kept us on track. And one quick story that I will tell you, when we had our meeting on Thursday night, there was too much talking going on, and Charles said, I must have quiet, I must understand what's going on in this meeting. So he told me he's going to give me a gavel. I serve as the president of the Black Caucus to tell me to bang it every time because he wants to hear every single word. That is none other than Charles Powell.
George Lujan, Executive Director of Southwest Organizing Project. You all recognize the acronym SWAP. President of SWAP, or executive director.
You can call me president, that's fine.
Why not?
Thank you, appreciate it. I'm just here on behalf of all of SWAP, all the members across the state, to show our appreciation for you, Charles, for always showing up throughout the years. And that's what it's all about, is showing up, and it's really important for us to have role models for myself, for all of us, and for the young people still coming through the organization that it's good to post about it online, but you still got to show up, and Charles is the master of that. And, you know, people say he shows up to everything, but it's really everything that matters. You know, he's there for a reason, not because he wants to be, you know, seen. There's always a reason that he's there. So we still have young people, you know, at a meeting, they'll say, who's that guy? I'm like, well, that's Charles. And they're like, he's cool. I'm like, yeah, he is cool. Charles is cool. So, you know, and as Daniel, you know, mentioned, we do need role models of how to be, you know, disciplined in this work. We're not like beat over the head with it while we're growing up. So it's really important to us. And I think some people, you know, shared some ideas similar to this, but you put a lot of work into these meetings or into these events or whatever it is to get people there and on these issues, and then, you know, you look out and you see Charles there and you're like, oh, all right, Charles is here, we did a pretty good job. So that's pretty much, so on behalf of the organization and the community as a whole, we really appreciate you and we thank you.
Well, we've been moving along much more rapidly than I anticipated. So we do have a few minutes for anybody in the audience who would like to have an opportunity to speak. Is there anybody here? Oh, George Brown. Is it George Brown? I'm sorry.
Billy Brown.
Billy Brown, Poetry Society. I apologize. I had you on my program. Oh, I'm sorry, we have a few more people, so come on up, Billy. I was looking at the wrong program. That happens.
You have to learn to turn the page.
Well, that's true. You're absolutely right, Billy.
Thank you so much. My name is Billy Brown. I'm not the president of anything, but I am the organizer for 11 years of the Fixed and Free Poetry reading, which happens the fourth Thursday of every month, except not in November and not in December. It's the second Thursday. And the reason I emphasize that is that Charles will be one of our featured poets on the second Thursday of December of this year. But isn't there something else you do on Thursday nights? Are you going to be able to be the featured poet in December? No, that's on the fourth Thursday. She just said Thursday nights. I figured it was every Thursday. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, you know, two people, I think, maybe even three, have already stole my thunder because they said, well, you know, Charles is a poet. And I didn't know that everybody knew that Charles was a poet. How many of you knew that Charles was a poet? That's fabulous. Charles lets the word get around, and he has been a participant at the Fixed and Free Poetry Readings for many years, and I thought that my best way to honor him is with his own words. And so I have the most recent Fixed and Free Poetry Anthology that was just published in October. Charles has 3 poems in this book. I'm not going to read all 3, but I'm going to read 2 of them that I think are particularly appropriate and poignant. The first one is called, the title is, When I Say I'm a Veteran for Peace. When I say I'm a veteran for peace, I mean I'm a proud member of the international organization founded in 1895. When I say I'm a veteran for peace, I mean I'm opposed to the use of weapons and violence to settle disputes. When I say I'm a veteran for peace, I mean I'm for diplomacy, negotiation, and peaceful conflict resolution. When I say I'm a veteran for peace, I mean I opposed the American wars on Vietnam, Grenada, Nicaragua, Panama, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and Syria. Are there a couple more now? When I say I'm a veteran for peace, I mean I now realize I should have refused to be a part of the Titan intercontinental ballistic missile launch crew while in the U.S. Air Force during the Cold War. That's that poem. Beautiful poem, Charles. And I've learned by listening to Charles's poetry that he's a very sweet soul with a very powerful passion and emotion. And I think that this particular poem typifies that. Crying Man. I'm a 6'2", 175-pound male Homo sapien, but I cry. I'm an adult, lady-loving, meat-eating, real man, but I cry. I'm a former U.S. airman, boxer, and survivor of Chicago streets, but I cry. I'm an opinionated, dedicated social activist known to stand up for peace and justice, but I cry. I'm a healthy, well-fed, well-dressed, and sheltered, with lots of friends and admirers. Still, I cry. I cry when I'm discouraged, cry when I'm depressed, I cry when I'm disappointed, lonely, angry, ashamed, afraid, or in pain. But I also cry when I'm happy, exhilarated, victorious, proud, or in love. Sometimes I shake, shudder, and tremble with dry eyes. Other times I'm hoarse with nose running and eyes filled with silent tears. Yet other times I openly weep, wail, bawl like a baby. Sad news can make me cry. Also, sad people, sad songs, stories, movies, poems. But so can good news, happy stories, and fun songs, movies, poems, and people. I cry for refugees. I cry for migrants. I cry for the victims of war, crime, prejudice, and hate. I cry for the sick. I cry for the poor. I cry for the casualties of fires, storms, floods, and earthquakes. Deaths make me cry. So do births, graduations, and weddings. Kindness makes me cry. So does rudeness, selfishness, greed, and apathy. I cry for asylum seekers, dreamers, and other immigrants. I cry for the hungry, the addicted, and the homeless. I even cry for those who don't cry, don't want to cry, and most of all, for those that see no reason to cry. Thank you for your poetry, Charles.
Thank you, Billy. Our next speaker holds a special place in Charles' life, I believe. Bloom Beloved.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm like shaking right now. I actually, okay. Can this be taken off? I'm like shaking.
I didn't know you were so demanding.
I'm shaking right now. Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, I'll just be here. Okay. So I'm Bloom Beloved, and I am Uncle Charles. He's my uncle. I'm his adopted niece. I adopted him as my uncle. I lived in Albuquerque for about 4 years, and I wrote him a special speech today. But I just wanted to say, so many people, you're quite a hard act to follow, but I will try. All of your words were very meaningful and moving, and I've been feeling all sorts of emotions all day, feeling a bit nervous. Try to get the shakes out. Thanks. I do speak in front of children a lot, but speaking in front of adults takes more work, and that's why I do Toastmasters sometimes. So this is my speech for Uncle Charles. It's actually a letter, sort of. Hello, Uncle Charles. I just spent over 32 hours on a Greyhound bus to get here from Dayton, Ohio, because there was no way I was missing this incredible opportunity to recognize and celebrate you for all of your accomplishments through a lifetime of passionate service. I love you, adopted uncle. We met at the Veterans for Peace event all those years ago, and you impressed me from the beginning with your own personal story to the mission statements of that organization. After a few times running into you at various events, as I didn't have any blood family here, I exuberantly proclaimed you my uncle and I your niece. That was such a special day when you accepted your role as my uncle and unwitting mentor. It has been such a special relationship since that time, and I love you very much, especially for your kindness over the years and treating me like a family member. You know that sometimes I may get a little frustrated because it may take you a while to return or initiate calls. However, what I always come back to is the potential reasons for these delays, which are your unique and unwavering passion, dedication, and commitment to all the many organizations you serve. I hope you know how much I support and admire what you do. You are a true inspiration to me and so many others because you practice what you preach. And I love how you work for the causes you are passionate about, especially social justice. Legit, you are the reason I aligned with and joined the Democratic Party and started actually marching on Dr. Martin Luther King Day every year, most recently in Cincinnati, Ohio, downtown. Remember when you first took me on the Freedom Train and how you took me as a special guest to those MLK breakfasts? You are amazing, Uncle. Uncle Charles, please never lose your passion, dedication, and heart for the basic rights of all human beings. I will love you always, Niece Bloom. And I just want to add one last thing. I hope I didn't do too bad there, even though I was shaking. I do want to give a special thanks to Bill and Barb T. Wald and all the other people in all of his organizations who had a hand communicating with me and pulling off this ruse to surprise Uncle Charles today.
Hey, some people would like it that way. The next speaker is Ben Imbus, coordinator for the Answer Coalition. Ben.
First thing I want to say, is that too loud? First thing I want to say is Happy Charles Powell Day. So yes, I'm Ben. I'm here as a coordinator from the Answer Coalition, not the coordinator. But, and I just want to say that the Answer Coalition has been organizing in Albuquerque since 2011. I got involved a few years after that, but since I've been involved, I've been very aware of Charles Powell. I think the first event that I saw him at was speaking at the police tribunal about the killing of James Boyd, and then he was at every single anti-war protest that I attended. I want to point out that Charles is not a single issue organizer. He speaks out for labor rights. He speaks out for indigenous people fighting corporate fossil fuel companies. He speaks out for the Palestinian nation fighting for its freedom. He's doing a campaign to prevent the privatization of the VA, to defend veterans, soldiers, and families who get used by the United States empire, and then after they're done, they're discarded. His anti-war work is defending people around the world who suffer from US wars and militarism and imperialism. So he really is a real example of how progressives in the United States can show solidarity to people around the world. And he has been one of the close friends and collaborators of the Answer Coalition. And this relationship has been a very important relationship because it's not always popular to be anti-war. It's not always popular to go out in the streets and speak up and say no war in Iraq, no war in Libya, hands off Syria, hands off Venezuela, US out of the Middle East, no to sanctions. It's not always easy to say those things. It's not always popular. And yet, it's a very real need, and Charles recognizes that, and we see him every single time. Anybody makes an anti-war call, Charles is going to be there. There might be multiple Charleses, by the way, based on how many events he's at. Another thing I want to recognize about Charles is that in the summer of 2017, our small anti-war organization was attacked. Our office was vandalized. Vicious rumors isolated us from many allies. They tried to intimidate and terrorize us into stopping the work we did, but Charles was principled. He continued to work with us. He continued to show all of our members and volunteers kindness and respect. He stayed focused on social justice, opposing war, and all the other works he does. And our members remember that kindness and collaboration. Though not all of our people could be here today, they all have the highest respect for Charles. So I want to say, yes, I'm young. Our organization is mostly young people, but we are humbled by the example of a lifetime activist for peace and social justice. So thank you, Charles Powell.
Thank you, Ben. I understand the money man is in the audience. Brian Colon, our state auditor.
Good afternoon. It is great to be here on Charles Powell Day, right? I can tell you just about any candidate who ran for mayor of the city of Albuquerque better have made this Charles Powell Day. Otherwise, they were going to get run out of the 11th floor of City Hall. And my name is Brian Colon. I am your money man. You're the individual who protects you against waste, fraud, and abuse in New Mexico, your state auditor. And thank you. Thank you. And I talk about holding people accountable and making sure that we prevent waste, fraud, and abuse in New Mexico. But when I think about accountability, particularly accountability for public elected officials, and who holds those public elected officials accountable, the first person that comes to mind is Charles Powell. Charles Powell has been holding me accountable for over a decade. I mean, if he doesn't get the answer he likes, he's going to ask the question again until I try and get close to right. And when they sent me the message and asked if I'd be willing to sponsor your membership and the inaugural memberships for the Peace Memorial on the Washington Mall, I said there's just not a question about it. The answer is going to be yes, and I'm pleased to make that $100 contribution in your honor, Charles. And I couldn't have been more honored to do that. You know, I got to tell you, I've been able to be engaged in our community for many, many years, but there are a few people who have been constant. People come and go. Activism ebbs and flows. Issues arise and they fall away. But just like this young man said, there is always one constant. And it's this individual who's not just a one-issue person. He's an issue, any issue, that has to do with justice and community, somebody who I refer to fondly as CP. I've been calling you CP for almost 20 years, huh? Huh, right? This is my CP. And he has always been there when it comes to justice, equality, fairness, community, and respectful engagement. And this is something that has endeared me to Charles over the years, because he hasn't always been in a position to say, you're my choice. And God knows I've run for a few things, Chris. Huh? The voters finally elected me and said, by gosh, this guy's not going to stop running until we elect him. We might as well send him to go do some work. But regardless of whether Charles supported me or not, there's one thing I can tell you he always did. He always was respectful with me. And that's something that we don't always remember in politics. And I think that's why there's not a single elected official, whether it's the incredible and amazing congresswoman who just walked out the door, or any other elected official in this community, will always get right back to Charles. Because they know that they're going to encounter somebody who's passionate, yet respectful. Somebody who's educated on the issue and is going to be kind. And somebody who I believe that as elected officials we should emulate on a daily basis. CP, I hold you in such high esteem. I always have, I always will. You inspire countless individuals, from those of us that are young, those of us that are not as young, those of us that have a lot of hair, those of us that are losing our hair, those of us that don't have any hair, Charles. You've garnered all our respect and our love, not just for your work with Veterans for Peace, which you're so renowned for, and I'm so grateful for that work that you've done, but for every issue you stand up for. You've made this community a better place, and I'll close with telling you unequivocally, because of you, I'm a better man and a better public servant. Thank you, Charles Powell.
Thank you, Brian.
Some people have to wait to die to hear these things, not Charles.
Charlene Piscotti, are you here? There she is. Charlene is a Bernalillo County Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles. And just two things. I want to say it in public. Happy Charles Powell Day, right? And I also want to say that I have never spent the night with Charles either. But that doesn't mean that I love you any less. Right? But I guess what I want to talk about, and so many people have said so many things, I will just tell my personal story. I honestly don't remember when I first met you. It seems like you have always been in my life. I'm like literally going to start crying. You have always been in my heart, that's for sure, from whenever the first time we met. And yes, I was elected Bernalillo County Commissioner of District 5. I'm the first Democrat and the first woman to hold this seat. And I say that because I want to make that clear, because nobody thought I was going to win except Charles. And I have to say, and this is from my heart, you were there at that very first meeting that I had, that organizational meeting for my campaign. You were there on the last day as well. My husband works just like across the parking lot from the polling place at Central and Tramway. He texted me a picture from that morning at 8:30 in the morning, right? We're going to start crying because we remember this. You were holding one of my yard signs and walking around that parking lot by Sprouts. And it was election day morning. My husband Kent had texted me that, and I was like, what the heck? And he's like, look, it's Charles Powell. He's campaigning for you outside the polling place. And I remember sometime during the campaign season, somebody said, if Charles Powell is on your side, you're going to win. That's right. And I think every one of us in this room knows that if Charles Powell is on our side, we're gonna win, right? And so just one more thing, before we start crying again, I have to tell you I have one bone to pick with you. You're a Chicago South Sider, I'm a Chicago North Sider. He's a White Sox fan, I'm a Cubs fan. But still, we know how to get things done in Chicago, and you are the best kind of badass around. And so Charles Powell, thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlene. Let's see if we can get this thing. Badass, 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 badass. A while ago, I thought we were almost at the end of the program. I had the wrong sheet in front of me, but we are getting close. Two things, though, that I haven't mentioned. You have index cards on each table. If anybody at a table would like to write a sentiment to Charles or a story or whatever you call him a badass maybe, but you can do that and we'll collect the cards. And I would like to, just for a moment, acknowledge the committee that put this program together. It was 3 months of work, and Willard Hunter, chaired the committee. Sally Alice, of course, was on the committee. Because it was a secret, we couldn't have Charles on the committee, so that's one place he missed out. Bill T-Wall. Bill was on the committee. And Haya. Thank you. And now, Senator. Who is the senator who's been sitting here all this time? And where, see, I'm on the wrong sheet again, just I want to make the, unbelievable, right? Senator Antoinette Cedillo Lopez. Hi, Antoinette.
Thank you. You know, I had started writing on my card what I was going to say, but Charles, and it's really hard to follow all these great speakers, but Charles, I just can't express how deep an impact you've had on our community. I think about social justice work, and I think about how hard it is. And so I like to think about it as a huge chorus. And so some of us will stop and take a breath at a time while we're trying to reach these notes and continue the chorus. But Charles never takes a breath. He's constantly there. And I have to tell you, I have been, Ray, I have been at places where Charles isn't there, and you're right, it's not a good place. It is not a good place. When Charles is there, you know that you've picked the right issue, and you know that he's going to give you guidance and he's going to give you support. And if Charles isn't there, what the heck are you doing there? So Charles, with that, I just want to stand with everyone else here to say how much we appreciate you and how much we love you and how much we know that you're going to continue being part of that choir and part of the chorus. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoinette. Our next speaker is Samia Assad, who is president of the Peace and Justice Center.
I'm going to make this brief. We love you, Charles. There hasn't been a second, I remember, at the Peace Center without you. There hasn't been one thing we've organized without Charles. There hasn't been a march we have organized that you haven't been a part of. And the Peace Center really appreciates and values everything you've done through the years. On behalf of them, we honor you. I just want to say, as a Palestinian Muslim woman, thank you. Thank you for standing against Islamophobia, for always standing with the Muslim community. And as a woman, thank you for standing up for women's rights. And as a leader of the Poor People's Campaign, you're always there. Thank you, thank you, thank you for everything you've done. What a legacy you leave behind in the community, but there's many more years to come. I'm sure we'll be doing more things with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Samia. Now, a very special speaker. A person who's special in your life, Charles, is my understanding. Of course, you don't let me in on these secrets. But Lynn Geschwind. Lynn, come on up.
That's quite an introduction. This will be very brief. I think I get the longevity award. I met Charles in October of 1976. No one will be surprised to hear that he called me. I was with the City of Minneapolis Civil Rights, and he had not one, but 2 charges to file. We haven't cleaned up Minneapolis yet, but he did his part. He was always, he was only in his 30s then. He was always a person who cared about each individual warmly, genuinely. He still does. He has seen to it that we stay in touch over these 1,100 miles of separation. And I think everyone who's spoken today has spoken to that he is constant and that he shows up. He shows up for people. I don't know what more any one of us can do. So, thank you. And thank you, Herb, for such an introduction. And thank you all for being here and for so warmly embracing me every time I've visited.
Thank you, Lynn. All right. Now, Willard Hunter, Vice President of our Albuquerque Veterans for Peace chapter. And I'll let you say what you're going to do, Willard, rather than steal your fire.
The first thing I want to say is it's my turn. Brian Colon mentioned it, but we have made a donation in your name to the U.S. Peace Monument Foundation, and this is the plaque that we are presenting to Charles. And it says, the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation is proud to recognize Charles Ray Powell as a founding member of the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation, March 24th, 2019. So 4 years ago, we had a lunch at the Red Lobster, and Charles surprised me and gave me a recognition as an Outstanding Member Award for our local Veterans for Peace chapter. my turn. So today, I want to recognize Charles Ray Powell as for exceptional service to our chapter as vice president and president for many years. And there's a long litany in here of all of the things that he's done for Veterans for Peace and all of the many organizations that he's been involved with. And it just concludes by saying, the members of our Veterans for Peace chapter salute Charles Powell on this 24th day of March, 2019.
Charles, I know you made an introductory elocution when you arrived. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Thanks, Herb. I'll say just a few. Well, for one thing, using my middle name, Ray, my mother would be impressed. She always called me Charles Ray, and many of you probably have noticed that often I'll sign things Charles R. Yeah, it's something that does please me a lot. I started off as a child in Jackson, Mississippi, and then and all through my life, there have been many people around me that have inspired and encouraged me, starting with my great-grandmother, who was my favorite person in the world, and my grandmother, Lulu, my oldest sister, Gloria. As you can tell, many of the people that inspired and encouraged me were women. Throughout my life, that's been the case. And these people set such great example. Some of them, because of the way they treated family and neighbors and friends, and then others who had work that was wider, like my father. My father was a strong union person and was also involved in politics. And he inspired me very early to be involved. And he always was on the side of workers. Wherever there was a struggle of workers anywhere in the world, my father sided with the workers. So I had that example. While in college, I got involved with other people that were concerned about what was happening in Vietnam. And we started an organization called PSI, People for Social Improvement. After a while, I realized that because I was a veteran, people were more willing to listen to me and what I had to say about peace and justice. And so some of us veterans on campus, and I'm talking about Black Hills State in Spearfish, South Dakota, we ended up forming an organization, and this would have been in, I believe, 1970. We started an organization of veterans that we called Veterans for Peace. And like I said, this was in 1970. The present Veterans for Peace didn't start until 1985. So this was before that. And we actually got a place in the Veterans Day Parade in Rapid City in 1970. But then when we showed up and unfurled our banner, Veterans for Peace, the organizers of that march would not allow us to march in the parade. And it made the papers. So I'm going to call on my friend Leah Thornton, who was the daughter of a close friend of mine, Lila Hendrickson, that worked with us in Veterans for Peace, in PSI, and then was a supporter of Veterans for Peace. I'm going to call on them to see if the journal has archives of that.
They do.
Yeah, so.
I looked, because I was doing some family genealogy, and I was looking for some 1943 pictures of DJ Day and DD Day and everything else. And they have a picture.
They have a picture of our.
I showed it, Mom.
Oh, wonderful. You'll have to give me a copy of that.
I will print it off.
All right. Yes. To look out and see so many friends and supporters is just overwhelming. And it's encouraging. I'm not going to stop working. I'm going to keep it up. Thank you all so much.
As we near the conclusion of the program, I would like to remind you, as you leave the room, you can look at the collage when you exit, the collage of Charles's life in many ways. Now we have a musical interlude. I understand. Now I understand. Somebody wants to sing. You know? Okay, everybody has to sing. The Raging Granny's here.
Everybody can point it towards the guitar, you think? Okay. You ready? Okay, everybody's got to sing along. It's to the tune of Hello Dolly. It's on the back of your program, and everybody's expected to sing loud.
For the end of
Thank you, grannies, and thank everybody for being here to celebrate Charles Ray Powell Day.
Thanks, Blake. You got it.